Hey, welcome. What if Naruto was Phoenix Feathers and Madara has completely destroyed Konoha movie? Sasuke. Yes sir. Are you ready? Yes sir. You know when and where to meet up should this actually work? Yes sir. They'll see you there, then team. Sasuke snorted, dope. The last two Konoha shinobi stood across from each other, flashing through hand signs. Slowly, the air around them filled with chakra. The 20-year-old Anbu commander and 19-year-old Rakudame Hokage looked each other in the eyes as they finished the last few signs. Let's save them all, said Naruto, his eyes deadly serious. Hi. With that, they clapped their hands together and roared the name of the jutsu. Second chance of the Phoenix. Everything vanished in a flash of bright light. Naruto opened his eyes to see nothing, just black space. Sasuke. He called out, Sasuke. Oi, Sasuke team. Answer me, you kami cursed idiot. Nothing, no calm voice responding to his insults. Damn it. The Namikaze Uzumaki swore, damn it. Where the hell am I? This was supposed to work. Why didn't it work? It did. Naruto whirled around, woes there. Do not be afraid, child, whispered the voice. It came from nowhere and everywhere, up and down, behind him and in front of him, from the right and the left. I have heard your plea, along with the Dark Ones, and I shall grant you it. None of this was supposed to have happened. Go back and fix it. Hope shone in Naruto's eyes as he stared around, trying to find who spoke. You're going to let us go? Yes. Thank you, Naruto breathed, thank you so much. The Kyuubi no Kisyun, said the voice, how are your relations? We get along, said Naruto, shrugging, it's been better since we made that contract. He makes snide comments and gives me chakra. I at least know that if he got out he won't try to kill any of my fry. Well, he won't try to kill Sasuke, Naruto smiled bitterly. That is good, said the voice, 9 tails you may return 9 people's memories. What? Look at your right wrist, instructed the voice. Naruto did as he was told, 9 black feathers wreathed in crimson flames circled his wrist. When you wish for someone to have their memories returned, concentrate on one of the feathers, press it to their forehead and order them to remember. The Dark One has a feather as well, tell him, there are other times, that was not the last, he will understand. Thank you so much, whispered Naruto. Do not disappoint me, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, said the voice, farewell. A burst of white light in the darkness, and Naruto was gone. Good luck, y'all needed. Naruto groaned as he woke up, the alarm next to his bed blaring in his ear. He smashed a hand down on it to shut it up. What do I need to do today? He thought blearily, translate that stupid scroll, it was talking about time travel jutsus. Wait. Time travel. He sat up quickly, memories coming back to him. He glanced around, recognizing the familiar posters of Raymond decorating his old current apartment that Pain had would raise to the ground when he attacked. At any rate, this was definitely not the Namikaze Manor, nor the ruins of Konoha. I made it back, whispered Naruto, yes. I made it. He scrambled out of bed and gazed out the window to drink in the sight of a healthy, happy, alive Konoha. The blonde snorted when he looked at the Hokage mountain. It looked so weird without Bachan's face and mine. What day is it? Naruto asked himself out loud, glancing over at the calendar hanging on the wall. It was the day before the Genin exams, which meant damn it, I have the academy today. Naruto ran over to his wardrobe and pulled it open to see orange. Ah, he muttered, I had almost forgotten I used to always wear so much orange, man, I miss my cloak. Sighing, Naruto pulled out a jumpsuit and put it on, then grabbed a bowl of instant ramen, poured some water in it, and warmed it with a kaiten to eat on the way to the academy. He also slipped on the goggles that had worn all the time before he got his hit I-8. Alright, so right now it's a day before the Genin exam. I need to meet up with Sasuke and well discuss what to do then. 12 o'clock at Team 7 training grounds. Naruto walked into the academy a few minutes later, feeling slightly uncomfortable. Scratch that, he felt awful. Another thing he had forgotten was how much the citizens of Konoha hated him before the Pain incident and him becoming Hokage. It depressed him slightly, but also annoyed him somewhat. Do they really doubt my father's sealing abilities that much? He was the best. He was better than his teacher, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Speaking of Iro Sennin, I am still mad at you for not telling me you were my godfather. I am also mad at you for not telling me the Yondaime was my father. I win ins coming after me or not, I think you should have let the truth out. I can take care of myself. Well, at least I could in the future. I wonder what skills I've retained. He entered the classroom still deep in thought, then looked around, wondering where to sit. The future Rakudame caught a flash of blue and black out the corner of his eye and turned to see Sasuke. The Uchiha was staring directly into his eyes. Naruto held the look. Sasuke slowly nodded, smirking. Dope, he mouthed, Hokage-sama, his eyes said. Team. Naruto shouted, playing the part of being an idiot, though he was grinning ear to ear. Sasuke, my friend, his eyes returned. Wham. Naruto crumpled to the ground as a fist smashed into his head. He looked up to see Sakura standing threateningly above him. Ah, he said, Kuzo. Sakura-chan. They are so annoying. The Pinket shouted, glaring at him. Naruto caught a glimpse of the beautiful woman and amazing medic nin she would become for a brief moment before that vanished, and she was back in her 12-year-old fangirl mode. Sasuke-kun. She squealed. Sasuke had to resist the urge to roll his eyes. Really, Sakura was so annoying in this time. Naruto was sitting on the floor, rubbing his head and trying to figure out what to do. On the one hand, in this time I would usually just bounce right back up and demand a date from Sakura. But that seems so wrong, it'd feel like it'd be betraying Hinata-chan, and not to mention what Lee would do if he could somehow came back from the grave and travel through time to hear. Naruto winced at the thought. Yes, the springtime of youth had traumatized him for life, or I could just go sit by someone. His mind made up, Naruto jumped to his feet and looked around for a place to sit. The only places open were next to some nameless other Sasuke fangirl. No. No, major no. Sasuke, tempting, but Sakura was dead set on sitting there, or. Hinata-chan. Shouted Naruto, running towards the back of the room and to his future wife. Hinata's eyes widened at the sight of her crush running towards her and calling her name, Chan. She felt a blush stain her cheeks as her brain overloaded and she fainted. I forgot she used to do that all the time, thought Naruto fondly as he sat in the chair next to her. A few seconds later Hinata's eyes fluttered, she opened them to see the grinning face of Naruto in front of her. Then Naruto-kun. She managed to stutter out. Good morning, Hinata-chan. Said Naruto cheerfully. Hello, and Naruto-kun, Hinata said, before fainting again. Naruto shrugged, until he could give the kunoichi her memories back, and he most definitely would. And thus by default have her regain her confidence. There wasn't really anything he could do about the fainting situation. For now he would just wait patiently and try to pay attention in class. ZZZ. The bell rang and everyone rushed out for lunch, everyone except the two time travelers, that is, they made their way leisurely from the classroom and then around the corner of the school. Naruto nodded to Sasuke and vanished in a swirling tornado of wind and fire. Sasuke smirked before following the blonde with a crackle of lightning. No one noticed their disappearance. Team, Naruto greeted his longtime friend. The Rakuten was standing in front of the memorial stone, looking down at it sadly. He could imagine all the names that had been added in the future. Aji-san, Iro-sen and Bachan, Kakashi-sensei, so many others. Okage-sama, said Sasuke formally, standing at attention. Relax, Sasuke, said Naruto tiredly, I don't know why you always have to be so polite. Sasuke frowned, Uchiha, he offered as an explanation, allowing disgust to lace his tone. He was still extremely pissed about his family's planned betrayal of the Leaf Village. Naruto nodded in understanding, turning to face the Anbu commander. Ami, you're short, said Sasuke, he had finally actually looked at his leader. What was that, team? You look very young, said Sasuke after a moment's hesitation on what to say. Naruto just groaned, well, you look very young, too, he said, so any complications getting back? No, said Sasuke slowly, however, there was something odd. Naruto looked sharply at him, what was it? Sasuke raised his right arm and pulled down the arm warmer there, on the underside of his forearm was a familiar-looking black feather with crimson flames. Ah, said Naruto, looking relieved, that's alright, then. But what is it? Pressed Sasuke, showing a little more emotion than usual. Present from the time goddess, the blonde said blandly, the voice had been distinctly female when he had thought of it. Sasuke almost lost all his composure, you met with the time goddess? He asked finally, regaining control, and she gave me a feather. Naruto nodded earnestly, yeah, I was with her for a bit. She said that none of what happened was supposed to have, so she was allowing to be sent back. She also said that with the feather, we could restore the memory of whoever we so chose. Feathers? As in plural. Oh, yeah, said Naruto. He pulled back his bright orange sleeve. Sasuke had winced when he first saw the monstrosity again, to reveal the 9 black feathers circling his right wrist. I have some too. Sasuke counted them quickly, 9, is that a reference to? Yeah, said Naruto, yeah, she said she gave on to you because well, she told me to tell you, there are other times, that was not the last, of course, I have absolutely no idea what that meant. Sasuke's mind had stumbled to a halt at his older brother's favorite saying, it was something that he had never told anyone about, even though they all knew Itachi was innocent as you can be after killing 314 people related to you on your Kage's orders, at any rate. Sasuke. Sasuke blinked, fine, he said automatically, I just know who my feather is for. Naruto nodded, he had a good guess, even if he didn't know what the message meant. So, Sasuke fished around for a subject, who are we going to return memories to? Sakura and Kakashi-sensei, definitely, Shikamaru, because we could use his brains, Gaara, Iro-sen and Bachan, Nagato, at Sasuke's blank look, he amended himself, pain, Hinata. You just want your wife back, said Sasuke, rolling his eyes. Naruto smiled sadly, he missed her, yeah, then he added, but she's a damn good fighter, you have to admit. Anyone else? Not that I can think of at the moment, with all those people we would have one feather left. The Sandame? Sasuke suggested. Naruto frowned, I don't know, I think we should keep it in reserve, if he questions us, we can talk to him about it. Sasuke nodded. This certainly makes everything easier, doesn't it? Said Naruto cheerfully, we won't be all alone in this. Sasuke nodded again. Well, sighed Naruto, I guess for now we should just try to keep the timeline the same, that way we can get to the snake bastard in the forest of death, we'll deal with the repercussions of that afterwards, and then try to deal with what comes next as it occurs, especially Madara. Sasuke let out a HN, in agreement. Let's get back to the academy. I can give Sakura, Hinata-chan, and Shika their memories back, said Naruto. Sasuke nodded for the third time and disappeared with the crackle of lightning. Naruto stayed for a moment in front of the memorial stone, he ran his hand over it softly, pausing over his father's name. We're going to change everything, Naruto promised himself, then the blonde vanished with wind and fire to meet up with his friend. Hey Shikamaru. Shikamaru sighed, he was up on the roof watching the clouds, having already finished lunch, Chaoji had gone off to train for the upcoming Genin exam, it was too much trouble for Shikamaru to join him. Now he was wishing he had gone with Chaoji, Naruto was much more troublesome. Yes. He said, not looking away from the clouds. He had to, though, when Naruto's hand entered his view, holding what looked rather like a raven's feather, except there were flames dancing around it, he didn't have time to react before the feather hit his forehead, and he heard Naruto say, remember. Images of the future flooded his mind, Team 6, the Chunin exams, the Sand Sound invasion, Tsuneda's Godame Hokage, Anzu taking over as temporary Hokage, Sasuke attacking the summit, Naruto somehow getting Sasuke to return to Konoha, the Sand invasion, marrying Temari, caring for Kurene's child, Tsuneda's death, Naruto becoming Rakudame Hokage, fighting alongside Naruto against Madara and then pain and darkness. Sweet Kami, Shikamaru breathed, pressing his fingers to his temples to try and relieve the headache he had received from whatever that was. Shika? Asked Naruto anxiously, did it work? Hi, Hokage-sama, said the Nara wearily, tch, how troublesome, I need a cigarette. Naruto grinned and launched himself at Shikamaru, laughing, Shika. It's good to have you back. Shikamaru sighed, Naruto really was more troublesome, wow you're really short now, Naruto. The blonde let out a howl of outrage, why does everyone say that? Everyone? Asked Shikamaru, how did we get here, anyway? Sasuke said I was short too, said Naruto sullenly, not answering Shikamaru's second question. One other person doesn't count as everyone, Naruto, said Shikamaru, yawning. Naruto ignored this in favor of answering the Nara's second question, you didn't really miss much Sasuke, and I managed to take out Madara, finally, but everyone else was killed and Konoha destroyed. In the Forbidden Scroll, there was a jutsu written in a language that hasn't been used since long before the founding of Konoha, Kyuubi translated it, called it Second Chance of the Phoenix. It took a while to set up and it took an ungodly amount of chakra, but Sasuke and I sent ourselves back into our 12-year-old bodies. What about me, then? Asked Shikamaru, he wasn't concerned about the chakra drain from Naruto, nor the casual mention of the Kyuubi everyone in the future knew of Naruto's tenant, they had also seen the smaller version of the Kyuubi running around when Naruto fashioned a body for the fox, which was part of the contract they had made. Oh, right, said Naruto, well, I was getting to that, Sasuke didn't have any difficulties getting back, but the goddess of time at least, I think it was a goddess came and talked to me, she gave me 9 feathers that could let people regain their memories of the future, and she gave one to Sasuke. Naruto held out his right wrist to show Shikamaru the proof of it. I really need a smoke, thought Shikamaru mournfully. Go talk with Sasuke, he can give you more details than I have time for right now and tell Sasuke to meet in the clearing at about 12:30, with that, Naruto jumped off the roof. Shikamaru sighed and looked at the conveniently placed clock that was on the roof, hanging on the wall right next to the stairway, it was 12:15 now. The Nara sighed, this was all just so troublesome, however, he dutifully climbed to his feet and set off to find his certain Uchiha. Sakura was aimlessly wandering the grounds looking for her Sasuke-kun, he had mysteriously vanished as soon as the bell for lunch had rung then again, he did that nearly every day. Sakura, said a voice from right behind her, making her jump. She spun around to see. Naruto. She shouted, raising her fist to hit him, he caught her arm before she could slam it against his head, faster than she could see him move. Come with me, he said, a completely serious look in his eyes for once, Sakura felt slightly unnerved by this, but she tried to hide it with bravado. Idiot. Why would I want to go with you anywhere? She screeched. Please, Sakura, said Naruto, this is important. Sakura huffed unbelievingly but followed him anyway, they walked into the woods a little ways until they reached a clearing. Ooh. Sakura gasped, this is beautiful. This isn't though, said Naruto grimly, quickly pressing a feather to the Pinkette's forehead, remember, Sakura. Sakura gasped as the same thing that had happened to Shikamaru a mere few moments repeated itself with her. For a moment she wanted to scream, but something inside her kept her quiet. Finally, the rush of information faded, leaving her feeling slightly weak and with a nasty headache. The girl automatically channeled chakra into her hands to use a medical jutsu on her head, but Naruto's hands caught hers before she could do anything. Aunt, he said, we don't know what skills we have or have not retained. Sakura nodded dumbly, rather taken aback with the whole situation. The last thing she remembered was staring across the battlefield, seeing the dead all around, then pain, blood, and death. Hi, Hokage-sama, then she smirked mischievously, well in this situation, why not take advantage of it? You're really short at this age, aren't you? Naruto threw his hands up in the air, I give up. He declared, you know, you're the third person to say that when they first saw me, he added grumpily. Sakura laughed, oh, cheer up, she said, y'all get a growth spurt soon enough. Yeah, when I'm, like, 15, grumbled Naruto. Sakura laughed again, who else is back? Sasuke and Shikamaru, they should be in the same place, as I told Shika to meet up with him to discuss the exact details of what happened after he died. They're coming here at 12:30, which is just about now. Sakura nodded solemnly at the news of Shikamaru's death, obviously she had died before him. She rose to her feet, well, I suppose I'll go find them, make sure they're coming, no. She swung her long hair over her shoulder, man, I really need to fix that Jana, Naruto-kun. Jana, replied Naruto. He watched Sakura leap away after a moment's pause to locate Sasuke and Shikamaru's chakra signals. I guess it's time for me to be reunited with my Hinata-chan. The blonde ran off happily to find his future wife, and the clearing returned to the quiet it had held before the two almost genin had come in. Hinata, too, was wandering the grounds, but she was mulling over Naruto. There was something about him today that seemed really different. He exuded confidence and demanded respect, as though he was the leader of the class, or a commanding jounin officer or Hokage. There was also the fact that he had called her Hinata-chan. She felt herself blush again. Hey, Hinata-chan. Shouted a voice behind her, she recognized it immediately. Na Naruto-kun, she greeted him, blushing more. Come on, I have something to show you. He said enthusiastically, grabbing her hand practically dragging her into the woods. Hinata's face was completely red now. After a few minutes they burst out into the same clearing that Naruto and Sakura had exited a couple of minutes before, except now Sakura, Shikamaru, and Sasuke were occupying it. Naruto. Called Sakura, waving from where she sat in the middle of the clearing with the two boys. Naruto squeezed Hinata's hand and walked over to them, Hinata trailing slightly behind. She couldn't help but notice he had yet to let go of her hand. What are we doing, and Naruto-kun? She asked softly. Y'all see, Hinata-chan, said Naruto. Hinata blushed again at the chan added to the end of her name. When they reached the others, the first thing Sakura said was, does she know? Naruto looked faintly annoyed as he looked down at Sakura from where he was standing. It's not like I could do anything out in the open like that. That's why I brought her here. Point, said Sakura, regarding Hinata carefully. Hinata was extraordinarily confused what was going on here. Since when did Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Sakura, loner, lazy, and fangirl, hang out together, much less together with Naruto? Why were they all looking at her like that? What was up with today? Why? Do you trust me, Hinata? Asked Naruto, breaking into her thoughts. He looked completely serious. Hinata hesitated for the briefest moment before nodding. Good, said Naruto. He raised his right hand. Hinata saw a black and red feather. When did he get that? And then it was pressed against her forehead, with Naruto right in her face. Remember? Hinata fell down to one knee, fingers pressed against her temples. She saw a life she hadn't lived flash before her eyes. Most of the last memories centered around Naruto, then the flow subsided. Hinata-chan? Asked Naruto. The other three were watching her as well. Naruto-kun. She shouted, jumping back up to her feet and pressing her mouth against her husband's. Naruto immediately kissed her back. Hey, said Shikamaru, we get it that you're excited to see each other again, but tone down the mushy goodness, would you? Y'all want to talk, Shika, said Hinata teasingly. You and Tamari were always giving each other googly eyes as the opportunity arose. Diplomatic position my arse. She's definitely back, said Shikamaru, sighing. Hinata grinned. She had grown out of her stutter and shyness, becoming one of the most outgoing nins in Konoha. She had picked it up from Naruto. Of course, you realize you're going to have to figure out a way to get Tamari to date you again, don't you? Shikamaru groaned. Can we just give her a feather, please? I'll consider it, said Naruto airily. Okage-sama, please, the Nara started, but was interrupted by the bell ringing, signaling that lunch was over. They had 5 minutes to get to class. Everyone meet at the memorial stone tonight, Naruto instructed. We need to see what skills we've all retained. All of the time travelers nodded in agreement. Well then, said Naruto brightly, time to get back to class. Kami, why? Moaned Shikamaru, staring up at the sky as though it held the answers. Why do we have to go to classes again? Because we're in the past. Chirped Hinata. DCH, muttered Shikamaru, so troublesome. The others just laughed as they leapt away, Shikamaru trailing sluggishly behind. It was just after 6 o'clock when the time travelers assembled at the memorial stone. Naruto and Sasuke had had the easiest time getting away, being orphans. Sakura had just claimed there was some extra credit she could be in, but Shikamaru and Hinata had had to sneak out. Okay, said Naruto, now we just figure out what we can do, I guess. Naruto-kun, I have an idea we could try so that we don't potentially destroy the training grounds, said Hinata, and didn't wait for his reply before checking all of them with the Byakugan. That's odd, she murmured after a moment. What? Asked Naruto, slightly alarmed. He didn't want anything to happen or be wrong with his precious people. Oh, nothing bad, Naruto-kun, Hinata quickly assured, just rather odd. It seems as though you and Sasuke have a little less than the same chakra as when I saw you last, probably because of the time travel jutsu. Sakura and Hinata had been filled in on what happened. Hinata had died several weeks before the final battle while on a scouting mission, whoever they were. They had wanted to gain Naruto's ire, and gain it they did. When he found out Wad killed his wife, he slaughtered them. Sakura, Shikamaru, and I all have the chakra that we had as 12-year-olds. Shikamaru nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense, he said. At Naruto's slightly confused expression, he had gotten smarter. He just didn't know what the Nara was talking about. Shikamaru elaborated. You and Sasuke were the ones who originally performed the jutsu and sent your consciousnesses back, but it could have been your spirit. Chakra is 1/2 spiritual energy, 1/2 physical. So that must have influenced your chakra levels and probably your control. However, you seem to have merely returned our memories, not our spirits. Thus, although we remember how to do all of this stuff, we don't have the chakra levels and/or control too. Everyone nodded in understanding of Shikamaru's logic. Man, I really hope I still have the same control, groaned Naruto. I really don't want to have to relearn that. He immediately focused on creating a Rasengan. It instantaneously formed, and the blonde sighed in relief. Do you still have your Sharingan, Sasuke? Sasuke checked. Manjikyu, too. It was also more of a mental switch than physical. Good. Naruto looked at everyone else and grinned evilly. They shuddered. Well. You'd best get started on those trees, they won't climb themselves. They all groaned but did as they were told. Naruto jumped out of bed excitedly. Today was the Genin exam. Of course, he had to fail them, but he would still pass in the end, so it didn't really matter. Damn it, I'm going to be a laughingstock with those guys, I can see it now. The only Hokage to have failed their Genin exams 3 times in a row. No, wait, it's 4 times now, isn't it ugh? The blonde wrinkled his eyes in disgust at all of the orange in his wardrobe but picked one out and slipped it on, along with his goggles. I can't wait to go shopping for new clothes, he thought to himself. I really dislike this color now. You were quite annoying as a kid, weren't you? Rumbled the Kyuubi from inside his mind. Oh shut up, thought Naruto, though there was no real malice in his voice. He and the Kyuubi had started to get along a bit better ever since Naruto had made a contract with him at 18. The blonde would fashion a small fox body out of chakra to let the 9 tails into for a while, one that Naruto could dispel on command. In return, the fox gave him chakra when he needed it and wouldn't kill any of his friend or attack the village should he get out. Not that attacking the village had been his fault in the first place, as Madara had been controlling him at the time. However, the contract allowed their 2 minds to link closer together and the Kyuubi could resist giving out snide comments here and there. At least half of which Naruto found amusing. Naruto grabbed his kunai pouch and strapped it to his leg, then adjusted the goggles on his head. I can't wait to get my hit I8, he thought excitedly. He then ran out of the apartment, only pausing to lock the door behind him. Breakfast was overrated, anyway. On the way to the academy, he ran into Hinata and walked with her the rest of the way. Good luck, he muttered out of the side of his mouth as they walked into the classroom. I don't need luck, the Hyuga scoffed. She had been one of the top jounin in the future. You, on the other hand, most definitely do. Naruto grimaced, then headed to an empty seat. It was right next to Sasuke. Hinata smiled and went to her usual seat in the back of the classroom. A few minutes later, Sakura calmly walked in and sat next to Naruto, grinning at the blonde. Ino followed close behind and screeched at the fact that Naruto was sitting next to Sasuke. That was her spot. And that Sakura was voluntarily sitting next to Naruto. What in Kami's name is up with Sakura? Sakura glanced levelly in her direction and then turned away, facing the front as Iruka walked in. Alright, everybody. The teacher said cheerfully, as you all know, today's the day of the Genin exam. We'll start with the written exam, then weapons, then ninjutsu. Mizuki here will be assisting me. Iruka gestured at the silver-haired man who had come in seconds before. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the traitor, but calmed down immediately before his killing intent could alert the 2 Chunin that something was wrong. He sighed and prepared himself for the tests. In the end, Naruto failed, as planned. He did abysmal on the written exam, though he knew all the answers, and made his handwriting atrocious, rather than the graceful script it usually was. The blonde had missed nearly half of his targets during the weapons exam, and when he did hit them, they weren't in the middle. Naruto could feel Iruka's pitying gaze as he trudged back into the classroom, pretending to be sullen. This is either a really awesome prank or a completely humiliating experience, the Namikaze Uzumaki thought to himself. The ninjutsu exam was the hardest for him to suck up his pride and fail at admittedly, he still couldn't form a regular bunshin, so that wasn't a problem, but who would need to when they had Kage bunshin? The henge was purposely failed, with him making the same mistakes he had the first time around. Kamawari was difficult to fail, so he didn't even try and just did it correctly. "I'm sorry, Naruto," said Iruka heavily, "you fail." "Oh, come on Iruka," Mizuki protested immediately, he did make a clone, even if it was rather sickly looking. Naruto almost burst out laughing it looked dead. Iruka shook his head, even if we disregarded that, he still failed the other two tests as well, there is no way we could make him into a genin. "I'm sorry, Naruto, maybe next time," he said sadly. Naruto nodded shortly and spun around, leaving the building in a huff. He sat in his usual swing and swung there, watching the exam finish, and the new graduates come out to be congratulated by their families. All of the time travelers looked at Naruto, still sitting in the swing, and didn't turn around until he gave a slow shake of his head and jerked it to the side, telling them to go. Just in time, too, as Mizuki appeared behind him, Naruto could easily see through his mask of fake pity and see the greed beneath. How had he fallen for this last time? You fell for it because last time you were an impressionable idiot without a family or any friend, and you just failed the genin exam for the third time. You had absolutely no experience, you didn't know about me, and you had no reason to think one of your instructors would lie to you, thought the Kyuubi, taking great pleasure in insulting Naruto. "You're damn annoying, Fox," thought Naruto as he tried to focus on Mizuki, and blunt, too. "Of course. Okay, he'll do it," agreed Naruto cheerfully. Mizuki smirked, "Good, I'm sure you can do it, you little demon brat." Naruto grinned and ran away to do as he was told or not. About 20 minutes later Naruto was standing by the same shed he had trained at last time. It had been remarkably easy to get in well, maybe not for anyone that could use the time-space teleportation powers of Hiraishin or his own Auric no Jutsu, though he hadn't had to use the latter this time, had to actually set the alarm off to make sure they knew the scroll was gone. Really, when he was Hokage here again, or maybe when Tsunade Bachin was, the security would definitely be beefed up around the Forbidden Scroll and other such valuable works, though why exactly the entire Icha series was there was rather odd. Well, Jiraiya was one of the Sandaime students just because they were in a time of peace didn't mean they should be so relaxed. "Sasuke," Naruto called, unrolling the scroll completely, "look at this with your Sharingan, would you?" Sasuke nodded and glanced down at the scroll, instantly memorizing everything on it. "Haven't you already looked at this?" he asked blandly. Naruto scowled, "By the time I finally got through all the paperwork Bachan left me, there wasn't any time, I had just opened it when Madara decided to attack." "Did you choose to not use Kagebunshin?" asked Sasuke. "I think you underestimate how good Tsunade is at not doing paperwork," Naruto sighed irritably, "hell if she's doing that again. He'll personally supervise her to make sure she actually does it." Sasuke gave a small smile. "Thanks Kami it survived," said Naruto, gazing at it, "if it hadn't we wouldn't be here right now." Sasuke nodded. Naruto heaved a sigh, "Well, it best train to get this jutsu under control. Want to spar with me?" The Anbu commander hesitated. "Academy stuff only," said Naruto, raising his hands, "no Hiraishin or Kagebunshin." "Sparring it is, then," said Sasuke, immediately throwing a blunted kunai at his Hokage. "You're on," said Naruto enthusiastically, reaching into his own pouch. A couple hours later the two nins felt a chakra signal approaching. Sasuke quickly hid, he didn't want to have to explain why he was there, while Naruto grabbed the scroll and slung it over his back, then bent over, pretending to pant like he was exhausted, just as Iruka burst into the clearing. "Naruto." The Chunin growled, "Why did you?" "Hey, Iruka-sensei." Naruto greeted him cheerfully, "It didn't take you long to find me, I only mastered one jutsu." Iruka blinked, "Huh? What are you talking about, Naruto?" The blonde gave a fake grin, then proclaimed, "Mizuki-sensei said that if I learned one jutsu from this scroll, I could pass the Genin X get down." Iruka automatically ducked just as a Fuma shuriken soared over his head. "What the Mizuki? What have you done?" Mizuki gave a jeering laugh, "You had that little monster protect you, Iruka. Your senses aren't as sharp as before." Iruka growled, "Hess not a monster." "What are you talking about?" asked Naruto, eyes wide in fake confusion. Inside, he was burning with rage at Mizuki. "I can't wait to beat that traitor to a pulp again." Mizuki laughed again, "You want to know the truth, brat? You want to know why the villagers all look down on you, why everyone hates you. It's because. No Mizuki. Haruka yelled, that's an S-class secret. The silver-haired man completely ignored the other man and carried on, because 12 years ago, the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi in a human form, you are the Kyuubi no Kitsune. This is a lot less traumatizing the second time around, thought Naruto idly. You really are an idiot, aren't you? He said out loud, taking a very vindictive pleasure in the expression on Mizuki's face. Why you're a monster. Declared Mizuki, unnerved by the total lack of reaction on Naruto's part and then the insult. Haruka, too, was shocked Naruto wasn't one that usually reacted well to surprises, especially ones of this magnitude, although insulting the surprise was spot on. And you're an idiot, repeated Naruto, shrugging, look, if you see a kunai in a scroll, does that make the scroll a kunai? I don't think so, as for my lack of surprise, I'm not deaf you know, I've heard people call me Kyuubi brat as I pass them in the streets, and I accidentally talked to him once when I was meditating. The last part was a half-lie, had actually been thrown off a cliff by Jiraiya because he wasn't able to access enough chakra for the Toad summon details. Both Chunin just stared at the blonde boy. Mizuki was the first to regain his composure. I'm going to kill you and take the scroll. Are you? Asked Naruto coolly, raising one eyebrow, I'd like to see you try. Naruto. Shouted Haruka, finally getting back on his feet, run. He'll hold him off, but you mustn't let him get that scroll. Naruto completely ignored this in favor of having a staring contest with Mizuki. He slipped the scroll off his back and formed a cross sign with his pointer and middle fingers. Do you want to see what I learned today, Mizuki-sensei? He grinned, killing intent filled the clearing, making both men shudder. Mizuki took a step back, Kagebunshin no Jutsu. Both Chunin stared in amazement as Naruto's filled the clearing. Mizuki gulped and turned to run. Even if the brat didn't have very good taijutsu skills and fought like a tavern brawler, there were too many for him to fight. Said Naruto, who was standing right where he had turned to, waving his finger as though reprimanding a bad dog. How did he get there so fast? Thought Mizuki wildly, surely he couldn't make clones that far away from his actual body. He made to leap away, but the blonde grabbed him and sent him flying into the air. A couple clones jumped into the air and bounced off each other to get higher. You! Shouted one, kicking Mizuki. Zoo! Shouted another, also kicking Mizuki. Ma! Hi! Naruto Renden! Shouted the final clone as he kicked the teacher into the ground. Haruka watched in amazement. Not only had Naruto mastered a Jounin level forbidden jutsu in 2 hours, he had also created his own technique. He had also taken the news about the Kyuubi well and had a very mature outlook about it. A scroll most definitely was not a kunai. The blonde checked to make sure Mizuki was unconscious before dispelling his clones and grabbing the forbidden scroll. He handed it to his speechless teacher, grinning. So, do I pass? Pressed Naruto, giving Haruka puppy dog eyes. Haruka snapped out of his stupor and grinned back at him. Close your eyes, he instructed his student. When Naruto did so, Haruka removed the goggles from the blonde's forehead and replaced them with his hit I-8. Open them now, he said gently. Naruto opened his eyes with the familiar weight of his hit I-8 on his forehead again. Congratulations on passing the Genin exam, said Haruka. Thanks, Haruka-sensei. Naruto shouted, barreling into the man, come on, let's go get some ramen to celebrate. Haruka smiled and ruffled the blonde's hair. Yeah, he said, let me just deliver this guy. He shot a dirty look at Mizuki to the Anbu. I'll meet up with you at Ichiraku's, K. Said Naruto cheerfully, already running, see you there, Haruka-sensei. Haruka flared his chakra and in a few seconds there was a group of Anbu in front of him. Mizuki is a traitor, he convinced Naruto to steal the forbidden scroll and then told him about the Kyuubi before trying to kill him. He informed the Anbu, they nodded, grabbed Mizuki, and vanished. Haruka relaxed and headed to Ichiraku's. Here goes my paycheck for the week, he thought wryly, and laughed. On the way to Ichiraku's, Naruto met up with Sasuke, who had left right after he did. Naruto almost rolled his eyes. You're so overprotective, he said, I'm not in any danger in this time, you don't have to follow me. Sasuke frowned, old habits die hard, he said. The Uchiha had been the main guard for Naruto when he was Hokage, always making sure that no one could get to him. Although it sometimes annoyed Naruto that Sasuke was always there, he knew that the Uchiha didn't want to lose any more of his precious people, so he allowed himself to be watched by the raven-haired Anbu. The Rakudane was also aware that if he died, Sasuke would probably go off the deep end. It had been worse in the future, when Itachi had been dead, but hopefully it would be better now. The two walked in a comfortable silence the rest of the way to Ichiraku's, Naruto ignoring the stares at the two of them walking together, the Uchiha prodigy and the dead last Kyuubi brat. Obviously the brat had done something to the poor Uchiha boy. Sasuke glared back at the people who dared sneer at his Hokage with such venom that a few of them stepped back involuntarily. Feeling a dangerous rise in his friend's killing intent, Naruto placed his hand on the Uchiha's shoulder and shook his head, "It's not worth it." Sasuke scowled. "See you tomorrow," said Naruto cheerfully as they reached Ichiraku's. "Hope we get on the same team," he added quietly. Sasuke gave a small smile, then turned and walked towards his apartment. As Naruto watched him walk away, he took it as a good sign that the Uchiha was comfortable enough to leave him here without watching over him. He turned and entered the ramen stand. Iruka was already sitting at the bar. "Iruka-sensei," shouted Naruto, running over to him. "Hey, Naruto," said the Chunin, "what would you like to eat?" Naruto's eyes lit up. Naruto laughed quietly to himself as he stuck the blackboard eraser in the doorway. If Kakashi fell for it once in the previous timeline, then he would definitely do it again, as the time travelers had only been back for a couple of days and hadn't really changed all that much yet. "You know, Naruto," said Sakura, clearly amused, "that eraser right there is the reason Kakashi-sensei didn't like us when we first met. We'll give him back his memories after we take the test, which we'll win, of course, and he'll love us again," said Naruto, not even bothering to turn around while answering, checking to make sure the eraser would stay. Sasuke snorted at the "he'll love us again." "You know that he does," said Naruto, "we're his first team." "So what do we do while we wait?" asked Sakura. Naruto pointed up at the ceiling. Sakura groaned. "Don't worry, we'll join you," Naruto was quick to reassure her. "I'm going to meditate on the ceiling, maybe talk with Kyuubi some." With that, Naruto walked up the wall and sat on the ceiling, with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. His other two teammates shrugged and joined him on the ceiling. Sasuke opted for meditating as well, while Sakura just wandered around, trying to build up her chakra reserves. 3 hours later, Kakashi walked through the doorway. The eraser fell on his head, leaving a good amount of chalk in his hair. The Jounin glanced around for the genin he was supposed to test, but they didn't seem to be in the room had they left. Akasha's faint stirrings of hope were broken by laughter coming from the ceiling. He looked up to see all three of the kids. There was a blonde with blue eyes in a horrific orange jumpsuit. He was the one laughing. Then there was the last Uchiha in Konoha, dressed in a collared blue shirt and white shorts. He was staring coolly at Kakashi from his seat right next to the laughing blonde on the ceiling, and he was smirking ever so slightly. Finally, there was a pink-haired Kunoichi in a red dress that was wandering around the ceiling and panting slightly. She was obviously very tired. How long had they all been up there? Surely not for the whole 3 hours. "My first impression is that you're all obviously talented, that you seem very dedicated to training, that you seem promising, unlike others. I don't like you." The genin all sweat dropped and the pinkette's arm twitched as if she was going to hit something or someone. "Meet me on the roof," Kakashi instructed before he shunshined away. A few minutes later they walked out onto the roof from the stairway. The pinkette was arguing with the blonde while the Uchiha just watched. "Believe you fell asleep. I thought you were going to meditate or whatever," she was saying. "I was meditating. It was an accident that I fell asleep," he protested. "I wasn't bragging, even if I do have higher chakra reserves than Ao." The pinkette had just hit him. The Uchiha smirked. "Kuzo, Sakura-chan, you hit so hard." The blonde complained, "Don't hit your Hokage. I will if it knocks some sense into him." They had reached Kakashi now. The blonde was massaging his head. "And you're not Hokage yet, Naruto," added the pinkette warningly, cracking her knuckles. "Yeah, well, you don't have any medical training, so don't beat me up when you can't heal me. You don't need any help healing," the girl shouted. Kakashi had been watching them, amused, until the pinkette seemed to reference the Kyuubi. He tensed slightly, but saw that there was no malice in the girl's eyes, just a joking light, had the blonde told her. If he had, that obviously meant he trusted her. The Uchiha had a small smile on his face as he watched the two of them as well. He caught Kakashi's eye, and the smile grew a little wider, as though saying, "Aren't my friends amusing?" Kakashi almost laughed. These children seemed like they would be able to form a team. Maybe he could pass someone for the first time. Ma, that's enough," Kakashi said, interrupting the two. They grinned at him unabashedly. "Alright, let's tell each other about ourselves. Name, likes, dislikes, dreams for the future." "Why don't you start?" asked the Uchiha. The three smirked at each other, as though they had some inside joke. Kakashi didn't have the faintest idea of what it could be, though. "Alright," sighed Kakashi, "my name is Hada Kakashi. I dislike my dreams for the future are well." The three genin twitched. They had all forgotten how annoying the Jounin had been when they first met him. "Blondie first," said Kakashi, pointing at Naruto. He had been immensely amused at their reactions. Genin always seemed to react like that. I wonder why. Naruto grinned and straightened his hit proudly. "Okay. My name is Uzumaki Naruto," he started out. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Why had he stumbled over his name like that? "I like ramen, training, toads, and Hinata-chan, oh, and my teammates, I guess." Said teammates glared as the blonde tacked them on at the end, almost as an afterthought. Kakashi could tell it was to annoy them. He was also taken aback. They already thought of themselves as a team. his hopes for them rose. I dislike snakes, perverts. Kakashi winced. Cursed hickeys, Toby, and red dawns. My dream is to become Rakudame Hokage. Oh, and have a bridge named after me. Kakashi blinked. That was weird. Cursed hickeys, Toby, red dawns. A bridge? And why Rakudame? If he wanted to be Hokage, then why not Godame? That was the position that was going to be open soonest. If he held out for Rakudame, he'd have to wait for a while. Sakura and Sasuke knew exactly what Naruto was talking about. Snake's reference to Orochimaru. Cursed hickeys. Sasuke had snorted at that. Were the cursed seals, specifically the one Orochimaru had given Sasuke during the second stage of the Chunin exams. Toby was Madara's codename in the Akatsuki, and Akatsuki meant Red Dawn, and then there was the Great Naruto Bridge. That had really swelled his ego. You next, Pinket. Sakura snorted. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like hanging out with my teammates' friends, medical jutsu, slugs, and training. I dislike all the same things as Naruto, annoyingly long hair. She had gotten her hair cut back to the short length it was before she died, and senseless death. My dream is to become a great medic nin, to study under Tsunade of the Sannin. And to help Naruto become Rakudame. Obviously all of the info he had collected from the academy teachers and others before this, it was why he'd been late and had stopped at the memorial stone, was wrong. You, Uchiha. Sasuke twitched. Uchiha was a tainted name. My name is Sasuke. He refused to say Uchiha. I like my teammates, training, tomatoes, my Chikudo, and meditating. I dislike all of the same things as Naruto along with my family. Sasuke sneered the word. Kakashi thought he meant the only living relation he had alive. Naruto and Sakura knew he meant all of the dead ones. My dream, my ambition is to kill a certain Uchiha. Finally, some information is right. Crowed Kakashi in his mind before he kills any more of my precious people. Huh. And to help Naruto become Rakudame, with myself being Anbu commander under him. Damn it. Thought Kakashi, none of them are making any sense. Outwardly he remained completely calm as he said, tomorrow is the final exam to see if you can become Genin. It's a survival exam, the passing rate is only 3%. Meet at training ground 7 at 6:39. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura had what the hell is with that time expressions on their faces. Don't eat breakfast unless you want to throw up, and don't be late. The Jounin vanished in a swirl of leaves. 6:39. Scoffed Naruto, don't be late. Hess not even going to get there before 10. We know, Naruto, said Sakura soothingly, come on, let's go get you some actual clothes. I thought we had finally seen the end of that monstrosity. Naruto followed her, still complaining, and Sasuke took up the rear, watching out for the two of them. The three genin arrived together at training ground 7 the next morning. Kakashi was sitting in a tree nearby, masking his chakra and remaining as still as possible. Something seemed a little very off, and he wanted to know what. He hadn't counted on them being an hour and a half late. Not that he was one to talk. When the Jounin saw the three, he was surprised. The loudmouth blonde, Naruto, who had been wearing a horrendous orange jumpsuit the day before, was now wearing black shin-length pants, his shins themselves being wrapped up in bandages in the usual Jounin way. He was wearing black sandals along with that, and his kunai pouch was strapped to his right leg. The boy had on a black shirt with a red spiral on the front and black fingerless gloves, with metal backing, that reached halfway up his forearm. What really surprised Kakashi, though, was the cloak the boy was wearing. It was a crimson red in color, with black flames licking the edges. It looked almost exactly like the Yondame's, but in different colors. Sasuke was wearing what looked like a standard Anbus outfit, including the armor, that was in all black, and there was a crimson sheathed Chikudo strapped to his back. He had no mask, of course, though Kakashi thought that it would somehow have fit him if he did. Sakura had on a sleeveless red shirt that zipped up, the same gloves as Naruto, and a black skirt on, with dark blue shorts beneath. Her headband was still on the top of her head holding her hair out of her face. She had a kunai pouch strapped to her right leg, and several scrolls tucked into a belt around her waist, plus what looked like a container for senbon needles. She was wearing black sandals. As they walked up, Kakashi could see that two of the three were extremely pissed off. The blonde was trying to calm down the other two. When they entered hearing range, Kakashi could hear Naruto say quietly, "Doesn't matter, guys, really, I'm completely used to." "You shouldn't be used to it," snarled Sakura, clenching her fists. Sasuke didn't say anything, but his lips were pressed into a thin line, and his eyes burning with anger. His killing intent was on a level Kakashi had very rarely seen with genin. What could possibly have set them off like this? And how the hell are they so strong? "Well, the point is that I am," said Naruto neutrally. Sakura let out a growl of frustration and swung back her arm, punching the tree that was nearest to it. The tree quivered. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Something was seriously wrong with these genin. "Do they not have faith in the Yondame's seal?" asked Sasuke, his voice icy. Yep, that definitely meant they knew of the Kyuubi. The three must be talking of the villagers. Kakashi had seen the way that they looked at the blonde when he passed them in the streets. Naruto smiled sadly, they're civilians, they don't understand, I just came out of nowhere the night of the Kyuubi attack, and Aji-chan said that the Kyuubi was sealed in me, he trusted them enough to think that they wouldn't take their frustrations out on an innocent child. Sasuke growled something inaudible, in one swift motion, he reached behind his back and withdrew the Chikudo strap there, he flung it at a tree across the training field, where it was driven into the bark halfway, quivering, a few seconds later the tree literally exploded. Kakashi jumped, oh yes, something was very wrong with these genin, he was going to have to watch them closely, his visible eye narrowed further. Did you charge lightning into that? Asked Naruto blandly, gazing at the wreckage, you shouldn't have done that in such an open space you never know who's watching. Genin shouldn't know how to channel elemental chakra, granted, Hessen Uchiha, but there's no way, could someone be impersonating them? But why? Sasuke didn't reply, but hopped over to what remained of the tree, grabbing his Shikudo from the ruins. You shouldn't take out your anger on those poor trees, Naruto chided him softly. You're right, the Uchiha growled, he'll take it out on those damn villagers. Naruto facepalmed, that wasn't quite what I meant. I agree with him, said Sakura, her eyes narrowed, they're all fools, they deserve to have some sense beaten into them. Naruto sighed, don't, he said. The other two looked ready to protest. Don't, the blonde hissed commandingly, it was the tone that Kakashi heard from a superior officer to a lower one, the blonde, who wasn't the most likely person to be team leader, apparently was, they're still my people, even if they're being irrational, having my teammate start a fight with them will only make the situation worse, let's bar you need to get some energy out. Akasha's eye narrowed further, his people. The two nodded tightly and slid into battle stances. Naruto grinned and made 20 Kagebunshin, he sent 10 out to Sakura and the other 10 to Sasuke, while he himself sat out. If you want, I can put them under a henge, he called, Sakura and Sasuke nodded, they did not take insults to their Hokage very lightly. A few minutes and, very violent, villagers' deaths later, the two walked over to Naruto and sat down on either side, Kakashi couldn't see very much of their fighting style, as the Uchiha had only used his Shikudo, and the Pinkat had just pummeled the Kagebunshin enough for them to dispel. Feel better? Asked Naruto teasingly. They nodded. How did you live with this? Asked Sakura wearily, wiping the sweat from her brow. Naruto shrugged, I couldn't at first, it hurt, the way people ignored me and belittled me all the time, that's when I turned to pranking, to try to get people to notice me, then I had Iruka-sensei, he saw that I wasn't the Kyuubi and took me in, has been kind of like an older brother to me, after that well, I had you guys, he finished, smiling. Well, hopefully you won't have to return half of the villagers' lives before they accept you, said Sakura, a small tired grin lighting her face. What? Thought Kakashi, I suppose they're just joking, or talking hypothetically there's no way to return the dead to life, of course, they could have a very warped sense of humor for spies. I hope a lot of things change, said Naruto seriously, he glanced over at the memorial stone, where do you think Kakashi-sensei is? Sakura rolled her eyes, who knows? Kakashi took this as an opportune moment to move from where he had been sitting for the past 2 hours, he shunshined, so he was standing right in front of them, they didn't look the slightest bit surprised, which disappointed him, had wanted to see their reactions, but also made him even more suspicious. Hello, Kakashi-sensei, they all said. Are you all ready for your final exam? He asked, staring down at them, oh boy, he was keeping a hawk's eye on them during the entire thing. Yep. Grinned Naruto, we all ate breakfast, too. Link, stare questioningly, didn't I specifically tell them not to eat breakfast? No genin has ever disobeyed that is, if they are genin, there's something that seems old about them, as though they've been through war. Well, anyway, I have 2 bells here, he held up the bells, you have until 11 to get them from me, a word to the wise. If you want to get them, come at me with the intent to kill, if you are who you say you are, that should be at least a little difficult, if not well, I'll deal with that when it comes to it though, I don't know how they've managed to pull something like this for so long. The 3 nodded, standing up quietly. Kakashi was slightly unnerved and watched them warily. The 3 genin leapt away into the woods, probably to formulate some sort of plan, Kakashi stayed next to the logs and memorial stone, waiting, they acted almost like an experienced team, the fact that they acted like a team at all was odd in itself, with the different personalities, there should be some clashes, the Uchiha, definitely, wouldn't want to give up leadership to the class idiot. What was really going on here? What were they planning? In the woods, the time travelers were planning, but not quite what Kakashi expected them to. So do we give him a feather now or after the test? Whispered Naruto, crouching next to his friends, I know I said that we would fight him for the test, but it might be best if we give it to him now, otherwise we might slip up even more while fighting him, Hess already really suspicious, we can't afford for this time travel thing to not work, Sakura said. Sasuke nodded in agreement. Okay, right now it is, said Naruto. He sighed, I suppose it's our own fault that we gave away so much, man. I really wanted to fight with him again, too. Kakashi turned as a kunai thumped down next to him. He glanced away from his book lazily to see a familiar three-pronged kunai. His eyes widened. There's no way. Hello, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto, materializing where the kunai had landed. The blonde reached out his hand and tapped a feather to the Jounin's head. Kakashi was too stunned at the jutsu to even consider moving, remember. As with the other three, the Jounin suddenly recalled everything that had happened in the future. Unlike them, it didn't take as long most likely, figured Naruto, because of the Sharingan he had, it must have allowed him to compute the data easier. Ah, Kakashi said at last, Naruto. Naruto grinned. Ma, said Kakashi, giving his familiar eye grin, you're shorter than usual. Naruto face vaulted, damn it, he muttered, the fourth person. I assume Sakura and Sasuke are back as well. The Jounin asked with an air of nonchalance. Yes, said Sasuke as he walked out from the woods, I performed the jutsu with Naruto that sent us back, an entity Naruto assumes is the time goddess met up with Naruto and gave him feathers to return people's memories. She gave me a feather, too, though I didn't meet with her. Kakashi nodded, taking this all in stride. So are we going to continue with the test? Asked Sakura, also emerging from the woods. No, I don't really see any reason, my pride couldn't stand it if I was beaten by 3 12-year-olds, even if you are from the future, you all pass, you know, if you had just given me a feather yesterday, we wouldn't have had to come all the way out here. All three of them face vaulted. Lunch time then, said their teacher cheerfully. It's only 9:30, said Naruto. Kakashi fixed them with a look, growing boys and girls, he added hastily at Sakura's glare, need lots of nutrition to help them grow, and you don't get that from ramen, by the way. Naruto pouted, I know that, Kakashi-sensei. But ramen's just so good, and vegetables all taste yucky. The other three time travelers stared at the blonde. Did you just say yucky? Asked Sakura at last. What's wrong with that? You're 19 years old, baka. Don't use the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. She shouted, smacking him on the head. Who else is back? Asked Kakashi, ignoring this familiar byplay. Shikamaru and Hinata-chan, said Naruto promptly, rubbing his head and wincing as he said it, I'm planning on giving Iro-senin, Bachan, Gaara, and Nagato their memories back as well, Sasuke's going too well, yeah. Everyone understood. You know, you really should have given me the feather yesterday, I was really suspicious of you, murmured Kakashi, you're absurdly lucky that I didn't tell the Hokage. The three genin exchanged glances, they hadn't thought of that, all they had planned was to play with Kakashi a bit, slight revenge for all the stuff he had pulled on them, but apparently they had gone far enough to make him suspicious. We knew you wouldn't tell Aji-chan without proof, said Naruto, trying to convince himself. Kakashi sighed, still, you know what they say about making assumptions. Yeah, said Naruto, rolling his eyes. The genin all said. It makes an ass out of you and me. Kakashi nodded, his visible eye curving up in the usual way he showed his smile, don't act weirdly, you guys, otherwise people will get suspicious. They stared at him. Too weirdly, he clarified. Just don't go around spilling stuff from the future, okay? Said Kakashi. They nodded. Good, said Kakashi, relieved, now I'll go inform everyone I've finally passed a team, and then tomorrow we can get started on D ranks. He trailed off, realization dawning on his face, oh Kami, we have to do all those D ranks again. The three genin groaned. Kage Bunshin. Shouted Naruto desperately, we'll use Kage Bunshin, and it won't take as long. We still have to do them, Sakura pointed out, it just takes less time. Which means we'll be more qualified for the Chunin exams, countered Naruto. Sasuke just sat there, mulling it over, it will help Sakura get back in shape, he put in. What was that? Asked Sakura, a false smile on her face. Sasuke just stared at her blandly, not scared in the slightest, almost nothing unnerved the Uchiha, plus, she couldn't use the super strength that Tsunade had taught her yet, because she didn't have the chakra control reserves yet, and because she couldn't just start using Tsunade's prize technique out of the blue, she had to have the blonde teach her first, admitted. You're completely out of shape in this time, you haven't been eating properly and you only looked at books, you need this to help you get fit. Sakura sighed, I suppose I can't deny that. Well then. Said Kakashi, meet at the bridge tomorrow at this time. The Jounin vanished in a poof of smoke, waving at them. Naruto sighed, getting up, we didn't even eat lunch, he said, staring at the unopened bento boxes. Because you protested about eating lunch at 9:30, said Sakura. It's almost 10 o'clock now, Sasuke said. HN, said Naruto, grabbing a bento, I'm going home, Jana, subordinates, he started walking away from them, then disappeared using Hiraishin. He had spent some time setting up the seals all over town the previous night. His two teammates watched him go. Subordinates? Asked Sakura, left eyebrow twitching, I hate it when he calls us that. At least he didn't call us his minions this time, said Sasuke, smirking. He, too, left, leaving Sakura alone on the training fields, contemplating what to do. The cage bunchen suddenly popped up from where Naruto had left. You should probably start on those trees again, it suggested, grinning wickedly. Sakura punched the clone on the head, dispelling it. She glared at where it had stood, then huffed and turned around, heading towards the trees. Far away at Ichiricus, a certain blonde almost choked on his noodles as he laughed at his dispelled clone's memories. Shikamaru sat down calmly next to his teammates, his body completely relaxed but his mind in turmoil. They had just taken Asuma's test, and while it wasn't that difficult to fake being unskilled, he was a genius and a time traveler for Kama's sake. He had plenty of experience pretending. It had been hard to see Asuma again. The last time he had seen the man was as he lay dying right in front of him. Everything had changed that day, for the Nara. The only good thing that had come of it was that he was able to comfort Naruto in his own grief. Shikamaru had been able to get him back on track because they had a connection, something that they could share. The Nara was good at getting the Rakudame back on track when he was distracted, which was why the young shadow user would be the Rakudame's head advisor. And because of the whole IQ of over 200 thing. But Kami, damn it, if he wasn't torn and wanting to just run up to his sensei and hug him tightly and maybe swipe one of his cigarettes out of his pouch. He really wanted to act on the latter part in this stressful situation to help deal with the overwhelming urge of the former part. The Sarutobi wasn't guarding them very closely after all. What 12-year-old would want to smoke? Shikamaru thought wryly, a smirk twisting his lips. The time-traveling 12-year-old was actually 20. Of course, I wasn't the one who actually came back. Beside, troublesome, he muttered, one hand absently reaching, out of habit, down to the pouch strapped to his waist to remove a cigarette. It's a filthy habit. Ino had shouted after about 6 months of him smoking, finally fed up, you should quit doing it, you're going to die young, from lung cancer or something, the way you smoke those. But they're Asuma senseis, he had refuted mentally, they're all we have left of him. Of course, he hadn't said that, he had just shrugged and lit another one. A few months later, she was gone. Hey Shikamaru. Chaoji's voice broke into his thoughts. The Nara jerked, his hand automatically moving towards his kunai pouch, before he realized it was merely his friend talking to him. You gonna eat your last piece of meat? Shikamaru took in the openness of his friend's face, the way that the Akimichi's expression carried concern for the dark look on his counterpart's face. The Nara was touched, in his own way, for the effort that his friend took in subtly drawing him out of his dark thoughts. Ino was, of course, oblivious. Concentrated on her food and ignoring her teammates as to get out of there as soon as possible to see if her Sasuke-kun. 3 had passed his test. There's no way Sasuke-kun won't pass, Shikamaru. Don't you dare doubt him. A vicious-looking yet beautiful young woman in a very dark purple Anbu outfit growled at him. Swinging her long blonde ponytail over her shoulder flashed through his mind's eye at the same that a vision of the younger version of the same woman pummeled him on the head when he had dryly suggested that Sasuke may have failed. A few moments ago. Nah, the Nara said, you can have it. Thank you, Chaoji. Asuma, however, was not as clueless to the byplay. He had watched the young Nara sink into thought after they sat down, eating his meal on autopilot. His eyes had steadily darkened with each passing moment, occasionally glancing at the Sarutobi, and several times his hand had twitched towards his waist, as if to grab something there. He also kept fiddling with his collar. As though accustomed to something else. Asuma frowned and pulled out a cigarette. He was confused by this kid, and the kid was staring at the cigarette in his hand. Don't mind if I smoke, do you? He asked the 3 of them. It was rather moot point, as he had come up to them and introduced himself with a cigarette in front of the academy, and he would probably smoke even if they said no, but he figured he might as well ask, since they were eating. Ino screwed up her face but shook her head. Chaoji also shook his head. Shikamaru had an almost hungry look on his face before he closed a mask over it and just muttered, it'd be too troublesome to disagree, and I don't really care anyway. Shikamaru, it would been easier to just say yes or no, said Chaoji, still chewing, you didn't have to explain. Shikamaru shrugged, leaning back and yawning. His eyes were still bright and aware, however, despite the way they were half-lidded. Just then, from outside of the Barbecue restaurant, there was a yell of, Shikamaru. The Nara jerked up in his seat as a bundle of red, black, and yellow sped past Asuma, stopping in front of the shadow user. Asuma noted with some amusement that the diminutive blonde in front of him, Uzumaki Naruto, was bouncing up and down in excitement. Hey, Shikamaru, guess what? The blonde asked enthusiastically. The shadow user groaned, realizing that the blonde had to stay in character and act freakishly hyper, before he wearily replied with, what? We passed. The Uzumaki said cheerfully, pumping one fist in the air. Shikamaru could see his clear blue eyes sparkling with amusement at the expression on Shikamaru's face in response to the over-the-top enthusiasm. Me and Sakura-chan and Sasuke team passed Kakashi sensei's test. Ino let out a squeal of joy that her Sasuke-kun had passed, Choji just kept eating. Asuma watched the Nara and Uzumaki, amused. Naruto was still bouncing. I think Kakashi-sensei likes us. He added. Shikamaru immediately caught the hint that they had given the silver-haired Jounin a feather. That's wonderful, the Nara said lazily, nodding his head and yawning again. Then, in order to head off any questions from Asuma as to why the blonde came to tell him when by all accounts they supposedly weren't very close friends, he said, why did you come tell me? Naruto, thankfully, immediately understood. The Nara was ridiculously grateful the blonde had grown out of the stupidity phase of his life. What do you mean, why did I come to tell you? The blonde asked, folding his arms over his chest and pretending to pout. We're chums, buddies. We didn't do classwork and skipped Iruka-sensei's lessons together. Besides, I wanted to see if y'd passed. Yeah, we passed, Shikamaru said in a completely bored tone. Great. Naruto said. The Uzumaki then turned to Choji. Nice job getting on a team with Shika on it, Choji. The blonde said with a foxy grin, I have to be on a team with Sasuke team. Hey. Ino shouted, completely missing the faint undercurrent of fondness in the Uzumaki's tone. Though Shikamaru and Asuma didn't, she stood up and marched toward Naruto, who gulped, recalling the Yamanaka's tendency to not take insults toward Sasuke well. She would grow out of it, eventually sort of, but that wasn't now, so Naruto took the wise course of action. He turned tail and ran. But not before dropping the bento he had snatched from the training grounds next to Choji, who grabbed it gratefully and started eating it. Shikamaru noted vaguely that the blonde was headed in the direction of Ichiraku's. Typical, he thought, troublesome, he muttered out loud. Ino sat back down with a huff, crossing her arms grumpily. Chi. She said, her eyes narrowed, that stupid Naruto. Sasuke-kun's better than him every day. Shikamaru rolled his eyes and stood, sensing that this would soon become a gushing flood of how amazing Sasuke was, had heard enough last lifetime. He really couldn't stomach any more at this moment. I'm heading home, he said, strolling away. He lifted one hand and waved a goodbye. Asuma glanced down at the Nara's now empty place at the table and noted the pile of money left behind, obviously to help pay for the meal. Shikamaru had obviously seen that the Sarutobi had underestimated how much Choji could eat. Asuma grinned, the Nara was a good kid, lazy, sure, but good. And evidently smart enough to escape when he could, the Sarutobi ruefully realized several minutes later, while trying to block out Ino's rant. The next few weeks passed quickly. Team 7 was biding their time until they could take the wave mission, as they named it, by taking a plethora of D-rank missions. They breezed through them with the help of Naruto's clones, completing several missions per day. The rest of their time went to training. Both with each other and with the other time travelers when Shikamaru and Hinata could make it, which wasn't often, and so was treasured. Sakura needed the most work of their team. At 12 she hadn't been in very good physical condition, being used to merely relying on her smarts, and her chakra reserves were so pitiful. It was like a single leaf when there should have been a full tree in spring bloom. Kakashi trained her relentlessly, forcing her to use chakra and relearn chakra control until she literally dropped and couldn't move. Sasuke was focused on retraining his body in the use of Ichikudo, because although he remembered the moves clearly and his body could almost execute the moves perfectly, he still needed to get his 12-year-old body adjusted to it. He also honed his already sharp reflexes by sparring with Naruto and Naruto's own personal army that performed devious tricks and pranks at the drop of a hat. Along with sparring with his best friend, Naruto was trying to regain some muscle tone and speed. Hiraishin was good and all, but he needed the actual seals to be able to do anything, and he wouldn't want to have to give up a secret weapon too early, thus he figured that he needed speed for himself. The other thing about Hiraishin was that though had only been studying sealing for 2 years, Gyuin Jutsu was easy enough for him to learn. The Namikaze clan was good at it as a whole, but had never had the time to tweak with the seal and see if he could improve it. Kakashi didn't work with Naruto or Sasuke that much. He occasionally joined them in a spar, but mostly stuck with training Sakura and working on regaining control of his Mangekyou Sharingan. Sasuke would help him with the latter if he asked, but the silver-haired Jounin had worked alone with it for years, so Kakashi didn't need to ask for help too often, if at all. Finally, the time came when the wave mission was open. Naruto had been periodically checking the mission roster for it. After a morning warm-up spar, they all headed out to the Hokage Tower. Alright, Hiruzen said, glancing down at the list half-heartedly. He really didn't want to give them another tier rank, as they had already by far surpassed the required amount to go into the Chunin exams, but Kakashi wasn't protesting, so Hiruzen just shrugged and read off the options. You can go shopping, help at the Inuzuka pounds, catch Tora. No way. Shouted Naruto, we've caught that stupid cat at least 20, maybe 30 times. The Sandaime sighed as he realized he could not deny that claim, nor could he say that Naruto was exaggerating. Or pick the weeds out of gardens around the village, he finished, laying the list down. He knew, of course, that there would be an argument brewing. Naruto wasn't the type that could stay stuck on D-rank missions for very long at all. It was a sign of his self-control that he had managed to last this long. It was a pity if they had argued earlier. The Sandaime would have let them have a C rank before this. Come on, Aji-chan. Give us a C rank or something. We've done every D rank in the book in half the time genin usually complete them. Naruto whined. He knew that the Hokage and Iruka, the latter, knew about his clones and how had been using them. The Hokage glanced at Iruka, who nodded his head in agreement. Hiruzen smiled. Well, it's just your luck that I have a perfect assignment for you right here, he said, patting a small scroll that was sitting in between the D rank and the C rank piles, specifically set aside when the Sarutobi had figured that Team 7 would be asking for a C rank mission soon enough. Naruto began to bounce up and down in excitement. Sasuke rolled his eyes at the immature act, while Sakura facepalmed. Kakashi just gave his trademark eye smile and ruffled the blonde's hair. You may escort Tazuna-san back to his home in Wave, said the Sandaime. Yes. Shouted Naruto, punching his fists into the air. C rank. The door behind them opened and the familiar to Team 7 white-haired head appeared through it, sipping sake from a flask gripped tightly in one hand. He took a last sip and wiped the excess from his mouth. You lot are gonna be the ones jetting me home? He asked doubtfully, his eyes sweeping over them and taking in their youth. You look like you're a bunch of weak brats, especially Blondie here. He made a vague motion at Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki quickly grabbed Sasuke's arm to keep him from doing any bodily harm to the bridge builder. He saw Kakashi do the same with Sakura nearby. We'll see about that, the Rokudaime said with a frosty smile. Despite himself, Tazuna shivered slightly. He covered it by taking another sip out of his flask. Naruto leaned closer to Sasuke and said, we're not allowed to injured clients, remember? The blonde felt a sense of deja vu as he remembered Kakashi telling him the same thing. Right, well, everybody needs to pack, meet at the gate in 20 minutes, Kakashi said, eyeing the struggling girl he held with trepidation. Sakura had a very volatile temper when it came to someone threatening, insulting, injuring her teammates. Naruto shoved Sasuke towards the door, breaking the raven-haired boy's unnerving, one-sided staring, glaring contest with Tazuna. The blonde then grabbed Sakura and led her out of the room as well, speaking quietly with her. Kakashi could see her shoulders relaxing as they walked out of his sight and had to let out a sigh of relief. They'd all forgotten that Tazuna had very much enjoyed insulting them when they first met, and it was only after they had saved his life a couple times that they got a bit closer. They seemed to be getting along well, mused Hiruzen, taking a pull from his pipe and puffing out the smoke, and though Uchiha Sasuke Wold seemed like the more likely leader for them, it seems as though Naruto is the undisputed leader. Oh, you have no idea, Kakashi muttered, chuckling and ambling casually out the door after his students. The Sandaime sighed as the Jounin left. Hiruzen was waiting for Naruto himself to tell him, because until then, he would keep secret what he knew. He had been watching Naruto during the genin exams and heard when the blonde had explained the jutsu he had used to, apparently, send Sasuke and himself back in time. He had seen the love Hyuga Hinata felt for the Jinchuriki, a love that Naruto returned just as deeply. He had seen them come together again, test their skills, return Kakashi's memories. And train what they were training for. He didn't know, but he did know that he probably didn't want to know. Of course, he had almost dropped his crystal ball in surprise when Naruto had demonstrated that he used Hiraishin and Rasengan. It looked as though the boy had found his legacy. He had seen everything and decided to let things run their course, with the Rokudaime Hokage pulling the shots. If the future was bad enough that the ever-optimistic, bright-eyed child Hiruzen loved saw fit to come back and change it, then surely they couldn't possibly make it worse, right? Sarutobi chuckled to himself, ignoring the inquiring look he was getting from Iruka. He motioned for the scarred Chunin to pass him some more missions to sort and send out. Really annoyed with him, Sakura said deliberately, because it's so unfair. The males stared at her, uncomprehending. Look, Sakura sighed, Naruto is faced with hostility every day by pretty much everyone in the village, civilians and ninja alike, and even when we get someone from outside of the village, they still zero in on Naruto. Tazuna doesn't know that I have the Kyuubi sealed in my stomach, Naruto protested, frowning slightly. He just picked on me because the blonde Jinchuriki screwed up his face in disgust as he trailed off, and then burst out with, because I am the shortest person on our team. Which, in Naruto's mind, equated weakness. Passerby turned and stared at the trio walking down the streets, caught off guard by the loud outburst. One would think that in a ninja village, they would have gotten used to such things, but they still turned around every time something loud happened, whether it be gay shouts about the springtime of youth. Or explosions, so apparently they were still learning. Team 7 ignored the odd looks and a few hateful glares that were aimed at the blonde once they realized who had been shouting and continued ambling along, only splitting apart once they had reached the midpoint between all of their houses. A few minutes later, the three genin were assembled in front of the gate, having packed their supplies a few days ago and merely having to grab them. Kakashi appeared about 20 minutes later, only 10 minutes later, when he said he would meet up with them, Tazuna in tow. "Alright, let's head out," Kakashi said, pulling out his Icha book and walking out the large gate. Tazuna followed nervously right behind the silver-haired Jounin, wanting to be closest to the fully trained professional, as he was doubtful of how well the genin were trained and didn't much like the concept of placing his life solely in their hands. Several hours and many rearrangements of positions in the loose circle surrounding Tazuna later, Team 7 passed a familiar, suspicious puddle. Naruto took special care to stomp through it and only half imagined the grunts of pain from the two Mizunukinen. The fight started out the same. Kakashi was torn apart by the demon brothers' chain, only for a cut-up log to fall in the place where the body should have been. The brothers ran for Tazuna, Team 7 got in the way, and the demon brothers were knocked out and tied up, easy. Kakashi strolled out of the trees casually, his hands in his pockets. Tazuna stared at the suddenly alive to him ninja, then looked at the log, then Team 7, and realized that yes, they were quite capable of protecting him. "Did you give thanks to the log?" Naruto asked, completely serious. Kakashi nodded solemnly, removing his hands from his pockets. There was a small scroll in his right hand, bound in a white ribbon. "I already wrote an apology, 2,000 words. Kakashi, Sasuke said slowly, "the log's completely destroyed, and apology's not going to cut it." 25 saplings for a destroyed and/or unusable log, Sakura said absently from where she was leaning over the two Mizunukinen. The Jounin waved it off, "Don't worry, I already set aside money for the saplings, I'll buy and plant them when we get back." Tazuna stared at them all. "What on earth are you lot talking about?" he demanded. All four ninja turned to look at him. "The almighty log, of course," Naruto said, a vaguely puzzled expression on his face. Tazuna just kept looking at them rather doubtfully, confused. "Ah, yes," Kakashi said, "you're not a Konoha nin, you won't know." The four huddled together for a second, debating fiercely, until Naruto was delegated to explain everything about the almighty log to poor Tazuna, whose head was reeling by the end of the long-winded explanation. "Ara was never confused about the almighty log," Naruto said, pouting slightly. "Ara's special," Kakashi said, "he doesn't blurt stuff out even if confused, and anyway, he spent plenty of time in Konoha, he had to have noticed." "I suppose," Naruto murmured, "oh well, I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? We worship the almighty log, so it's all good." Tazuna shook his head. Are we going on or?" "Oh, yes," Kakashi said lazily, "despite the fact that you lied to us about the ranking of this mission, didn't tell us that you were being targeted by dangerous nin, and are a rather annoying, sake-drinking irritable old man, we're continuing." Tazuna opened his mouth to protest about the last statement, but then realized that he probably shouldn't test the patience of his guards, lest they leave him. Silently, he started walking down the path again behind Kakashi, the three genin trailing behind and laughing slightly. Despite knowing all the details of what had happened and knowing how much Naruto-kun had grown in power since his early genin days, it still amused her to no end that he technically had never become a Chunin. The Hyuga was understandably very nervous, tense, and just altogether in a rather foul mood. Which is why, when she finally snapped at her family, it really shouldn't have come as so much of a shock as it did. Relations with her family over the past month hadn't really improved. She had, of course, noticed when his daughter had actually grown some backbone and personality, though she was hiding most of it behind her regular timid facade. He was a high-ranking ninja, of course he noticed, and he was, in his own way, prouder of his daughter than he had ever been. Not only because she had more confidence, but because he could see her increase in power and was, dare he say it, happy for her. That did not, however, mean that he had lightened up on her, nor could he show that he knew how much she had grown, thanks to his own chaffing restrictions set upon him by the Hyuga High Council. Who could not see how his daughter had grown and would make an amazing leader someday, the blind old fools. Hanabi simply stubbornly refused to notice the change in her older sister, despite the fact that Hinata was no longer the slightest bit timid or afraid around her, or that the older girl was driving the younger to a standstill more often than not during their spars, with very few moves and perfect forms, nor could the younger see the older was holding back. Her strength from her older age returning as she trained continuously. The morning would have passed with no incident if several different things hadn't occurred right after each other. 1. Hanabi was in a bad mood as well and was attempting, and failing, to get Hinata to show some sort of negative response to insults in order to make herself feel better. Was all she thought before he shook his head at the strangeness of girls. Hinata could see what her younger sister was attempting and thus valiantly managed to ignore her for the most part, that is, she managed to ignore Hanabi until the younger girl struck a goldmine by suddenly going on about village troublemakers and idiots, Naruto being the primary subject of both. That soured Hinata's mood significantly. 2. The elders, who came in a few minutes after the head and his children, were letting loose snide comments about weaklings of the Hyuga clan and glancing covertly towards Hinata. To Hanabi's smug amusement, Hinata's mood was now past the acidic level and currently going towards boiling lava at which she would lose her temper, explosively. 3. A branch member of the family had come in to serve the elders, made some sort of a mistake, and the elders invoked a reaction from the caged bird seal. That was the final snapping point for Hinata. She could only put up with so much with an already foul mood after a full month of being looked down upon as worthless and having to hide her true talents, relationship with Naruto, and feelings toward what her clan was doing. Well, no more. Enough. She snapped, rising from her seat and slapping an open palm against the table. Most of the dishes on the long table rattled from the force of her blow. Hinata felt her eyes shift to Byakugan, as they constantly did when she was really mad, and right now. She was pissed. Biashi, having seen this mood before from his late wife, knew that he should duck and take cover. He didn't physically do so, of course, as it would be unbecoming of the head of the Hyuga clan, but he did calmly set down his tea in case he needed to make a break for it if Hinata had as much of her mother in her as he thought she did. He didn't even want to attempt to restrain her until her fury had blown out. The elders turned to look at her in some surprise. The one who had been using the caged bird seal on the member of the branch family released it, and the branch family member quickly exited the room after giving a grateful glance in Hinata's direction. Of course, dear thing, he thought it was all for him that she had lost her temper finally. Well, if Hinata ever figured that out. She certainly wouldn't see fit to correct that it was merely that on top of everything else that had completely pissed her off. Easier to get better relations with the branch family by just not mentioning that little detail, although, yes, the caged bird seal had always disgusted her. I am tired of it. She hissed, I am tired of your whispers of how I'm not the perfect heir, of how I'm weak compared to Hanabi, of how I can never compare. I do not care. You all of you are so corrupt and have such inflated egos because of your positions on the High Council of Elders that it makes me sick. When Hinata become leader of this clan, I will personally see to it that all of you, you pompous jackasses, know what it's like to be sealed, what it's like to be looked down upon, and well see how you are able to stand up to such torment by members of your own family. The elders were stunned into silence before they could start in on her. However, the Hyuga heir rounded in on Hanabi, Byakugan still invoked. And as for you. Hinata scowled, I get it, okay. You think I'm not good enough, have never been good enough, will never be good enough, but that's not all there is to it. You're jealous that I'm the one that knew Kasen, you're jealous that I'm the heir to the family, you're jealous that I'm the one who has friends and knows what it is to be loved. You've tried and tried and tried, and it utterly infuriates you that your stupid older sister has close friends and teammates to lean on while you're alone, so you try to make yourself feel better by attempting to make me feel miserable. That's enough, Hanabi. If you would let go of your foolish pride, things would be so much easier, you could make friends, and you wouldn't have to be jealous of me. Hinata seemed to deflate a bit at the end of her rant. Hanabi stared back at her, eyes wide and a little hurt as the truth of what Hinata had said hit home with her. Why can't you see that I love you, Imato? Hinata whispered, then she let her Byakugan fade and strut out of the room, heading towards the training fields. She absently swiped at her eyes on the way. Biashi finally looked up from where had been staring at his tea, surveying the table and all the havoc devastation wreaked by his eldest with a coolly detached expression. Well, he thought, mentally smirking, at least she didn't start in on me, too. Team 7 plus Tazuna made their way quickly across the land of fire until they reached the boat that ferried them to the land of wave. Despite the necessity of having to explain the almighty log to Tazuna, they still managed to make better time than the first time they had gone on this trip. Kakashi informed them of this with a smug look on the amount of face the genin could see. You taught us next to nothing. Naruto said, quietly accusing him, but with a joking tone underneath. Who do you think you are, trying to claim credit for our achievements like this? Kakashi put on a mock-wounded act, clutching at his chest, his visible eye curved into the usual U-shape that signified him smiling. I'm your teacher, he said. The three genin looked very doubtful. I taught you tree climbing, he protested. The three snorted, the man steering the boat and Tazuna shushed them, staring around into the mist surrounding them nervously. Yeah, because you were incapacitated then, had nothing to do but teach for a change, and you knew that Zabuza would be back. Sakura said. I also taught Sasuke Chidori, Naruto how to harness wind chakra and apply it to Rasengan, and you hear the Jounin trailed off. He fidgeted nervously under the head of the medical corps glare and looked pleadingly at his other two genin as he desperately tried to recall a time he had actually taught the pink-haired girl something one-on-one. Sakura raised one eyebrow in impatience as Kakashi kept fidgeting. Can't think of anything, can you? She asked tauntingly. I learned most, if not all, of what I know from Tsunade Shishu. Fine, Kakashi grumbled, crossing his arms. I'm a lousy teacher, didn't we already establish this several years ago? Yes, the three genin said. But that was years ago, Naruto said rather mischievously. This is the first time we've gotten you to say that now, interjected Sakura, not one to be left out of teasing their former yet current sensei. Sasuke simply smirked and leaned back to enjoy the show. For several more minutes, Naruto and Sakura badgered Kakashi until he finally announced with relief that he could see the land of Wave and they better shut up if they didn't want to broadcast their location to everyone in the land and thus possibly allow unknown foes to set an ambush for them. The man steering their boat and Tazuna both looked very unsettled by their conversation, what it entailed, and were nervous of how loud the four were talking, despite the fact that the ninja weren't saying anything in a tone over a low murmur. Whispers traveled, as the four ninja knew from teachings and experience, said ninja knew that there were in fact assassins lying in wait for them. And it won't matter how loud they talked because a trap was already set up. Hold on, Naruto said, after they had all gotten off the boat, his arm was thrown out in front of the other four to make sure they did so, I'm going to send some cage bunching ahead to make sure the coast is clear. Before any of the others would protest, not that they would, as the ninja all knew there was a dangerous ninja in front of them, and Tazuna just plain thought it was a good idea, the Jinchuriki had formed the cross hand sign for his favorite and most useful jutsu. 5 Bunshin popped into existence in front of the Team 7 plus Tazuna, they immediately hinged into the forms of the originals. Though they knew what to do, having experienced this before and also because they were Naruto himself, the blonde made a show of commanding them to walk ahead of the originals to clear out any dangers they were to fight if necessary, but otherwise merely dispel and allow the real Naruto relay to Team 7 plus Tazuna the knowledge that they could go on safely. Briefly, before they all loped off as they were told to do, the real Naruto wondered if Haku was watching them right now and was on his way to inform Zabuza of the deception. The question of whether or not Haku had told Zabuza was answered when the clones were unaccosted the entire time and when a gigantic sword was thrown over Team 7 plus Tazuna's heads, it lodged itself in a tree, and then Zabuza, the feared demon of the mist, appeared before them, balancing himself on the handle. Not shaking this time, Sasuke? Naruto asked quietly, grinning fiercely. Sasuke shot him a dirty look as a reply and drew his Shakudo. Zabuza, Kakashi said levelly, the demon of the mist. So you've heard of me, the Kiri Nukenin said, sounding pleased, I've heard of you as well, the man who has copied 1,000 jutsu, Sharingan Kakashi. Kakashi hummed an agreement to the name, his visible eye curving into a smile, more than that now, I should think, the Jounin then glanced down at his students and casually walked over to stand next to Tazuna. Well, I trust you all to take care of this, he said to Team 7, he then pulled his copy of Icha Icha Paradise out of his kunai pouch and started reading it. Team 7 sweat dropped at their teacher's attitude, Zabuza almost fell off his precarious position of balance on the handle of his sword. What the hell? He spluttered, you're not even going to fight. I'll kill your genin in a few seconds. Team 7 looked mildly affronted and made as if to protest, but then Zabuza noticed exactly what Kakashi was reading. What the hell? He shouted, you can't read porn in front of impressionable young children. Too late, Sakura and Sasuke muttered, glancing at Naruto, he shrugged sheepishly. Hey, it works, doesn't it? He replied quietly. It's not like him reading it out loud to them or anything, Kakashi defended, not looking up, besides, Naruto here was perverted before I even met him, so you can't blame me for that. Yeah, well, at least I don't go around reading Iro Sennin's books anytime I get the chance. Naruto shot back, and I don't even use Oryak no Jutsu anymore. Sakura and Sasuke both coughed out a quiet Konohamaru. Shut up, Naruto said, that was nostalgia. And he needed to learn how to do a henge better, just be thankful I definitely don't use the harem no jutsu anymore. Zabuza mouthed Oryak no jutsu and harem no jutsu quizzically, not that anyone could tell because of the bandages wrapped around his face. Seriously, what the hell is this guy teaching them? Even if I weren't going to kill him and his students, I would definitely never, ever allow Haku anywhere near him, ever. Still, perverted is perverted, and you created those two before you met me, so I'm in the clear, whatever. Ah, material I married regardless, Kakashi said, an almost gleeful note in his voice. He then spoke to the Nukenin, you should remember, Zabuza, that only the most powerful ninja have such quirks and actually live long enough to constantly annoy people with them. Zabuza facepalmed, I try not to think about those kind of people. Just like how we try not to think about Guy, Naruto muttered to his teammates as Zabuza started ranting about ninja head met with absurd quirks. I've actually gotten pretty used to him because of Lee, Sakura murmured back. Yes, well, that's you, Naruto said, I, on the other hand, could never get used to him Lee. Sure eventually, Guy. Hell no, he was the one to originally come up with the power of youth. Lee's even more youthful than Guy, Sasuke pointed out. Yeah, well, at least he knew when to tone it down, some, Naruto shot back. True, Sakura admitted, especially after I got to him I even got him out of that awful green jumpsuit occasionally. Please tone him down soon, Naruto practically pleaded. Sasuke didn't say anything, but Sakura could see the desperate light in the raven-haired male's eyes too. The pink-haired Kunoichi shrugged. "I'll think about it," she said with a wicked grin, then she looked back at the Kiri-nuke-nin, who had been monologuing for the past several minutes. "Oh, I think Zabuza's almost done ranting about traumatic experiences with quirky ninja, although Tazuna seems to be the only one actually listening." They all sighed. Kakashi would had his book raised in front of his face again. Zabuza hadn't noticed. Team 7 turned their attention back to what he was saying. "I can at least take comfort from the fact that I don't have too many quirks, if any." Manic laughter, said Naruto, "That's a given." Listing all the ways to kill someone in a happy tone, Sakura added, before realizing that, oops, he hadn't done that to them yet. Hopefully, he would just assume they had heard horror stories of how he did that. Hopefully, then again, Lady Luck as of late had seemed to fluctuate back and forth from standing firm on their side to crossing over the line and consorting with the enemy for a while. "Offing the whole graduating class of Kurigakure before you were even set to graduate yourself," Sasuke finished off. "Smartasses," Zabuza said, "I'm going to kill you all," and the man you're guarding, he zeroed his gaze in on Naruto, "you can be the first to go, shorty." Sakura and Sasuke glanced at each other and then quickly backed away from their Hokage as a vein started to throb in his forehead. "God damn it." The blonde yelled, "Who the hell are you calling so short that he could get lost behind the Hokage's stack of paperwork, eh?" The blonde time traveler then proceeded to create about a dozen Kage Bunshin, all of whom immediately pulled out kunai and charged at Zabuza. Zabuza blinked, not sure of what to make of this reaction. "Goddammit," he muttered as he prepared to rip his sword from the tree and take care of this annoying brat. "I hate people with weird quirks." Amic. Starts the date teams were assigned. Ino, as a person, did not really notice the finer details of things when she was fixated on something else. Thus, instead of noting the fact that Sakura had cut her hair to a short length when all the girls, except for Hinata, but she was chasing after that annoyance, Naruto knew that Sasuke liked girls with long hair. The Yamanaka had focused on the fact that Sakura was sitting calmly next to her Sasuke-kun, along with Naruto, because they were a team now. She had scowled and fumed and ranted internally about how the universe wasn't fair to her, but sat down relatively quietly, plotting new ways to make Sasuke hers. In light of this, we are now capable of understanding why she didn't take the first opportunity to realize that Sakura had cut her hair and what the implications of that choice were to the fangirls of the class. However, that didn't make it any less amusing when she finally did notice her ex-best friend's haircut. It happened just after Team 10 had finished eating at the BBQ restaurant. Choji, Ino, and Asuma were all leaving when a certain short-haired, pink-headed, very tired Kunoichi trudged past them, muttering obscenities and something about arrogant smirks on blondes, just has to rub it in, doesn't he? Ino's mind registered the pink hair, and before it had registered the shortness of said hair, she had called out, "Hey forehead." Sakura lifted a weary head and looked at the Yamanaka. "Good evening to you too, Ino," she responded, then, eyeing Ino's horrified expression, she asked mildly, "Is something wrong?" Ino raised a quivering hand and pointed at Sakura's hair. "Your hair." Sakura's face showed vague confusion as she ran her fingers through it. "Yeah, I cut it last night, didn't you notice it in the morning yesterday? You were glaring kunai at our team for at least an hour while waiting for your sensei to show up, so there was plenty of time for you to have seen it." Ino shook her head mutely. Choji pulled out a bag of chips and started munching on them at the same time that Asuma grabbed a new cigarette and lit it. Thought neither of them liked or understood teenage girl melodrama. They knew that it was polite to wait for the Yamanaka before heading out. "You really should pay more attention to details like that, Ino pig," Sakura stated, only half joking, which was something Asuma noted, but not anything that caught the attention of Ino or Choji. Ino huffed rather grumpily and then realized how this event was significant. "This means Yao've admitted defeat and given up on Sasuke-kun, doesn't it?" The blonde crowed, a delighted smile spreading across her face. "Well, yeah," said Sakura, flicking her head rather impatiently to get her bangs out of her face. Ino did a victory dance. Sakura watched in amusement. Asuma and Choji just hoped the girls would finish this up soon. "If Sasuke hasn't fallen for one his many fangirls yet, then I really don't think he'll fall for some helpless Kunoichi who always depends on him as her strength," Sakura said forcefully. She was hoping to impart what she knew to Ino as a warning advice to leave Sasuke and get on with her life, or if that backfired, to convince Ino she needed to get strong in order to have Sasuke acknowledge her. "I'm going to focus on being the best Kunoichi I can, probably specializing in medical ninjutsu to help my teammates. You should find something you're really good at and work with that to help your team progress." With that final bit of advice, the pinkette brushed past the blonde, leaving behind a spluttering Ino, an indifferent Choji, and a somewhat impressed Asuma. Well, Asuma thought to himself, looks like Kakashi must have gotten her to grow out of the fangirl stage somehow during her team's test and apparently got her to train, if that's the reason she seems so tired. So friends, that for today.